Wait, where did I put my lucky rabbit's foot? So my partner and I have a talk show. If you're here, you know. But it's called the Lucky Rabbits Talk Show, and we get to invite fortune tellers, readers, intuitives into the Warren. And today we have a super fun guest who I found on social media. And if you want to follow someone who's super fun on social media, cannot recommend enough. Pop on my
Oh, that's so
sunglasses.
sweet.
I'm gonna pop on my sunglasses and we will let them introduce themselves.
Thank you so much. Well, hola mis amores. It is your favorite fortune teller, Fernie, here with Golden Mirror Fortunes. I am so excited to be here in the Warren. I can't remember the last time I was in this side of the hole. And I am just so excited to be chatting with you. You have just been such a ray of light. I love that we are following each other now because like whenever I am needing some bursts of like love or joy or just, some fashion for your nerves, I know where to go and I know where to find you. And it just makes my heart so happy. So yay, I'm Fernie. I am your favorite fortune teller and I'm so excited to be here chatting with you.
Awesome. I love your intro so much. Hola, mi amor, or hola, mis amores. And especially love because you use the AI captions. The AI cannot figure out. It was so you're Fernie, right? And
Yes.
and the AI loves to say Bernie, Ernie, and it's so funny. Um,
And in real life, people also just don't know what a Fernie is. I get Freddie, I get Frankie, I get Bernie and Ernie, and I'm like, no, it's just Fernie.
like a beautiful kind of planty, kind of hippie, kind of naturey, very like
All of it.
millennial.
That is exactly what it is. Do you remember the movie Fern Gully? That was my nickname as soon as that movie came out. Like, that was who I was. And I have remained a fairy fighting for social justice this entire time.
Which we need right now, absolutely. Because you're in the United States. What part are you? You're central.
No, I'm super deep south. So I'll explain to you a little bit of the context of like where I grew up and what it's like now. So I'm like in the lowest part of Texas that you can be. And so like you have the Gulf of Mexico and you have like three little counties that like are right next to it, right above Mexico. And so I grew up there and I still live here. I went to college in Houston and then I came back. But my entire life, and actually since like 1860, this whole community was very progressive, very liberal, very much like community minded, and we're going to take care of everyone. And this is actually the first election in which that was no longer true. And so I grew up kind of like thinking and knowing that, like, yeah, like Texas can be what a lot of people imagine Texas can be. But my community was not that. And so it's been a little bit of a rough awakening to like the ways in which like the world can change, even when you don't think that it can.
Well, if it comforts you at all to know, I know for a fact that a lot of swing states and different places got their votes discounted. There were something
Oh,
like, yeah, so this was the first year that there was vigilante vote challenging. And it's also, I think it was something like 4.5 million votes were challenged of specifically people of color. And that swung a lot of the swing states, the swung states. But basically, I don't know who to quote on it, but there's someone who did a lot of research into it, and they verified that like 4 million votes were just like abandoned. So don't maybe your area is still as good as you think. You know what I mean?
it might be, we are making our way through it. Whatever it is that is the reality. Like my reality is that we are going to be filling the world with love, with joy, with comfort, and we're going to build a community that can take care of each other. And I think like that's regardless of whatever else might be, happening around us.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it too. I will jump right into it though. Do you want to talk about your practice and like what you do and how people get readings from you and like what that looks like?
Yeah, I would love to do that. So I am a fortune teller with Golden Mirror Fortunes. That's the brand that I have built. And so at Golden Mirror Fortunes, we kind of do three main things. The first thing, and the thing that we're most known for, and the thing that we do most often, I speak with the royal we. I am a queen. The thing that we do the most often is tarot card readings. And so I use tarot to really help guide people through whatever it is that they might be going through. And sometimes, that's divination and like trying to figure out like whether a job is going to happen or an interview is going to go the way that they want them to, or a date is going to go well. Sometimes that's literally just like, here is what is happening in your life. Like, let's figure it out and let's tease it out. And sometimes it can be like therapy, and sometimes it's like you're not liking where life is right now. Let's figure out like why that is, and let's see how we can make it better. And so I love being able to use tarot in all of those gorgeous ways to really provide people with like the thing that they need. I want to give everyone what it is that they exactly need. And so that's tarot. The other thing that I work with is astrology. And so I've written a few horoscopes for like various publications, and I read people's charts, and I'll help them out with like figuring out like what's going on in their lives with their charts. I really love the way that astrology like provides people insight and reflects back to them like who it is that they are and like why it is that things happen. Like sometimes you just don't know what you don't know about yourself, and you're like, oh, yeah, like I do have a stellium in Scorpio, and that's why I find it so hard to trust people, right? Or yes,
Absolutely.
I didn't know that my rising Gemini meant that I love to talk. And so like it can help people like I think understand themselves. While also like providing like insight, like like this is a really good time for this to happen. You should be working on this here. This is the energy of the moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Astrology is like really good for that too. It'll really tell people, especially I've had some older clients and younger clients, and if you get it done younger, it's really great because it'll kind of tell you usually the houses and like the degrees, they'll start to point you into the career path that you should go into. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one. I've had a lot of people who I've read for who are older, and they'll say, oh man, when I was a kid, I wanted to do that, but I didn't think I could. And it's when I have younger clients, I'll be like, the older people I read for, they tell me that they wish they had this advice. So listen up. Astrology is a really good one for that. I know for me, like my birth chart,
I
I'm a Sagittarius, but once you break into it, this is like my hidden secret. Once you break into my birth chart, I am like weighted score like 8 out of my sign or out of my planets are like Scorpio.
oh wow.
Like so it's like the sun is like lying to people. It's like Sagittarius is a light, fun adventurer, and then the rest of my chart is like deep dark.
It penetrates, and I love how like astrology can do that. Yes, I think like we're always making our fate, we're always making like what it is that we're going to be doing, right? And I think astrology as like a mirror in that way can really help you be like, oh, like if I want to feel most acknowledged, seen, whatever, I should be doing something like this, and I think like that's a way that astrology can really help. Short little aside about astrology. So two of my best friends, they were going to get married, and they wanted me to officiate. And so we like scoured the entire like year, and I was like, Venus is conjunct Saturn on this day. Like this is when you need to get married. Like you're
You
going to
did
make
so
a you're
well.
right. And it's just so fun because you can like see that, and you're like, this is what's going to happen. And their marriage is going very well. And so I think I did a good thing there.
Yeah. Have you ever done synastry, like couples astrology where you compare charts?
I do, and I love doing it. I'm really a one-on-one type of girl. Like I want to help you, and I think oftentimes people will come to me like wanting synastry for like a guy they have a crush on, or like the girl that they sit next to in class, or like this person that they're going on a first date with, and I'm like, calm your tits. Like we need
Yes.
to like figure you out. And then like once you two are together, like officially, like Let's see how you
Yep.
two are impacting each other rather than if this is going to work out. Um, and then I think
I
like the
have that.
third thing that I really, right? Like it's just like, why would you want to know things that are going to impact the way that you're going to act, you know?
It's more like how you're gonna handle it, right? Like especially with tarot,
Yeah.
I'm like, we can like ask a bunch of questions about your ex and your job, or we can really look at you. We can look at like how you feel there, what you can do, where you blocked, where you're moving through, and that's gonna help those little things.
And I think that's what I really love about being a fortune teller. Like, I am telling you your fortune. I'm not here to like tell you someone else's fortune. I'm not here to tell you like what is, going to happen a week from now. Like, you need to know right now where you are and how you can make the life that you want. Which I think also is really like the other aspect of Golden Mirror Fortunes that I really love, which is the magic part. Like I'm a practicing witch. And so people will come to me like looking for like herbs, they'll be looking for like candles, they'll be looking for crystals. And it just brings me so much joy to be able to say, like, you're gonna do this at this time with these materials. And this is the result that we can be looking for. And like I think that a lot of faith and a lot of like just hope goes into it too, and it just really brings us together because it's like we're doing something to make your life better, which just makes my heart so happy.
Yeah, it's empowering people, honestly, and that's so much of witchcraft, which is why
Hmm.
like practitioners are usually people who are like kind of marginalized, or I mean especially through history, like the more oppressed like a group is, the more witchy they become, right? Because it's kind of like fighting
Yeah.
power and claiming power. I've only had a few people who talk about like practicing witchcraft, so that's very interesting. Do you want to go into like kind of like how you found that and like your practice? Obviously not prying, because I know most of it's kind of private sometimes, but
You can cry all you like, you gorgeous creature. And so I don't think that this is necessary, but I come from a long line of like magical practitioners. My great grandfather was a curandero in our hometown. That's like a folk healer. And so people would go to him and like be looking for folk medicine. They'd be looking for healing. They'd be looking for ways that they could, make life a little bit easier.
yeah.
And his son, my great uncle, not my grandpa, but my great uncle, he also was a curandero, and he was more of like the witchy, like I have a store where I make potions, and like this is like the candle that I'm gonna make for you. And so I got
Oh.
like it was super cool. It was like so fun, like hearing all of these stories. They were gone before I was born, but
Mhm.
like just hearing like what it is that you could like there are stories that they would tell me about like the smoke and the mirrors and like the ways that people would like just change after they like saw one of them. It made me want to do it. And so my practice really began like when I was 5, and I'm sitting outside my grandma's house, like we're on the porch, and we're just there sitting, and it's like boring because it's like the middle of July in South Texas, so it's like 1,000 degrees, and there's mosquitoes and flies and everything. So we have a citronella candle burning in the middle of us, and I just start staring into it, like not like because I'm bored, right? Not like trying to do magic or anything. And my grandma's like, don't stare, or my mom's like, don't stare into it, you're gonna get lost. And then my grandma's like, déjalo, like let him. And so I don't get lost, thankfully, but like I was able to like tap into something, and they saw that. And so from there, they would have me like interpret their dreams. They'd have me like look at the
So
herbs that they were growing in their garden. They'd have me like be thinking of like the teas that people could use, or the ways that candles can help, or like we cure people with eggs, or like all sorts of like just these things that like I don't know is part of like your traditional elementary education,
no,
but it
oh,
was definitely part of mine.
that's fantastic. You're one of the first people I've interviewed who talks about like being immediately embraced by their family and then trained in it. That's so cool. And like that's a great way to keep the tradition alive. I mean,
Hmm.
especially it's cool that you didn't get to meet the people who are practicing before you, but like maybe that's like silver lining is like you got to really develop your own thing. I don't
It's
know. That's
so
cool.
beautiful.
Yeah. What a great journey. Wow. So, and you still practice all those kinds of things, right? You said you still do herbal medicine and
I do. I'm really fortunate. My house that I live in now has this really big space for a garden. And so one of the things that I really like did intentionally was plant things that are both native to where I live, but also are just like really magical. And so I have like vervain, I have verbena, I have mint, and I have rosemary, I have rue. I have like an orange tree because orange is great for everything. I have like an arnica plant. I just have like all of these things because even if like my friends just come over for like, a bite to eat and they're like, oh, like I've been sad because this guy stopped talking to me. I'm like, you know what? Let's go outside. Let's get you a little cleansing. We're not going to let you stay sad like this. Like, let's talk about it and then let's like make things better? So
it's
it's just nice to be able
fantastic.
to. Hmm?
That's fantastic. I love that. What a
Yeah.
great way to build community. Because like food is a great part of community too. So like if you can incorporate healing and feeding people and just like being together from your garden, that's a witch. That is full witch.
Thank you. I love being a full witch like that.
And so from your family, you were able to learn like a lot of the herbal stuff, or like how did studying herbal kind of stuff go for you? Like what were your materials?
Yep, so it was a combination of things. So my grandma especially did teach me about like some of the most common herbs. And so she taught me about chamomile tea, and it's kind of sovereign for everything. Like it will cure anything that you're going through. She taught me about like mint and rosemary, and a few of the other little flowers that she had in her house. And she'd be like, these are things for like this or that. Obviously I don't remember them much because I can't even remember their names, but like they were
Yeah.
there. But I remember those three things. And then when I was much older, when I was like 20, in my late 20s, I decided that I really wanted to like embrace that part of me. And so I just like picked up like the books that like everybody does, like Scott Cunningham's like herbal herbiary and all of like the things that just like you see. And that I think combined with the knowledge that I already had from my family, plus just being so, I think, in tune with the land where I am, it allowed me to see like, okay, like you're saying this for this, but actually like I know that it's because of this that it's this. And so we're able to like then make a new thing, which I really loved.
Absolutely. It's like a fusion. With witchcraft, it's interesting. Like I whatever however I kind of found my stuff, it's very like it looks eclectic on the outside, but you need each piece to be able to understand like ritualistic kind of things, right? Like it takes knowing your stones, it takes knowing your plants, it takes knowing like the basic foundational stuff so that you can create your own kind of like situation. That's awesome. But it
It's
is a
so
long
powerful.
process.
It takes forever. It's a lifetime. I still, like will reach out to my friends and be like, hey, this thing is growing and I know it's talking to me, but I can't quite translate what it's saying. Can you help me? And then, we'll come up together and I'll be like, oh my God, like this is the goddess Hestia, like telling me that like I need to make this a community garden or whatever, and it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as like elements, like is earth kind of the element that you're drawn the most towards?
You would think because like I love my garden and I love my herbs. Earth is actually one of the hardest elements for me to work with. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to this because it's tough, right? Like I have to work at Earth. And I
Oh, it complements you because you have like a very, so you do have like a very airy kind of energy about you. And then earth would kind of be that opposite.
Yeah, and that's what it does. It like grounds me and it helps me. Like I can't tell you how many times I'll be like at my computer working and I'll be like, I can't. Like my brain is fried. I have no more to give. And I'll just go and I'll walk outside and I'll be in my bare feet, like touching the grass, touching the ground, and it'll bring me back to like the airiness that I really need. So yeah, I think air and fire are definitely the two elements that like I'm able to tap into the easiest. Water is I'm familiar. But earth is always really tough. Yeah, earth is just always really tough. What about you? What elements did you like respond to immediately, and like have you still found maybe a little bit difficult to play with?
It's really interesting because I would normally kind of feel like this is at odds with each other, but it's that same thing that I kind of found in my astrology chart is water and fire. Fire
Okay.
very much drawn to as far as like smoke, cleansing, like gazing, it really also a little bit, but water more than anything. I grew up right by the ocean in Maine. We're like very far away from each other, but both
Yes.
very bodies of water. Water for me, I is really my one. I'm like a sea witch at heart.
I love that. That makes my heart so happy for you. Do you get to the water often?
I did a lot more when I was younger. Now that I'm older, well, I live literally right on the coast. I live in Portland, so I'm literally right there on the water. As much as going in the water, it's like once a year. Lakes I get towards a little bit more. It really depends on where my family is and like if I can go visit them or what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even my practice is I have like a place that I go to do in-person readings. And even that's actually right on the water now that I think about it.
How gorgeous.
But it's like that hidden Scorpio.
Yeah. It's like I'm not so hidden if you know where to look.
Yeah, I did a lot more with plants. I had an indoor herb garden that I was growing. As far as plants, like I brought a bunch of my reference books on this trip and I made sure to bring my herbal book.
I love it.
Yeah, it's I think it's Nicholas Culpepper's Complete Herbal, like the old herbal, but it's got all his original illustrations and writings, but then underneath they had to do like disclaimers on all of them
Yep.
and be like, but we don't use it that way anymore.
Like this is
He's like,
this is just for your nerve.
yeah, he's like, oh, I don't just tossing it out, but like I think he's like, belladonna is great for stomach aches, and underneath it's like, we know now, no.
Please do not do this.
Yeah, it talks about like treating with what is it? Antithetical and sympathetical kind of like herbal stuff. And underneath it's like,
Yeah.
but that might kill you if you try to do it that way. So it's interesting to hear that you learned from actual people, not books, because that's a lot safer of a way.
I feel like it. Like they wouldn't want you to die, and they would have already seen the people die or
Yes.
tried the things that they shouldn't have.
I kind of look back and I'm like, oh my God, they used some of these treatments so poorly for so long, and they must have realized at some point they were messing up.
You would think, but who knows?
Yeah, that is so cool. I expected you to just talk about tarot. I didn't realize you did astrology and witchcraft too. I
Yeah.
I'm very impressed by that. Witchcraft is one that I think a lot of people look at as like nonsense or like woo woo, but like there are so many different components that learning it, building your own practice, and like maturing into it is difficult and it takes conviction, especially because people kind of put you down or discourage you when you're doing it.
100%. And I mean, I don't think it's a secret that I probably have been put down often in my life as like this isn't the way that like one should be, right? And so I think like to your point earlier about like witchcraft really being about being marginalized, I think that that may have like started the path. But my journey has been really full. Like I've been a school teacher, I've been a school principal, I now run my own business. I'm an educational consultant. I work with like school districts all across the nation. I've like written for great publications like with magic and all of these things. And so I know that like as much as like all of the things that I am might be marginalized, Fernie, your favorite fortune teller with golden mirror fortunes, is not is not marginalized. Like I know that like I am very much like centered in a lot of ways. But as a witch, Like it's my job to help the marginalized, right? It's my
Yep.
job to make sure that the marginalized have a voice. And I'm gonna misquote Terry Pratchett, but one of the things that like his quotes that really sticks in my head about like witchcraft is that like you have to be a voice for those who don't. Like
Yeah.
if you have a voice, you have to be the voice for those who don't. And I have just made it such a central part of my practice as a witch, my practice as a fortune teller, my practice just as a human to stand up for those who can stand up for themselves. And I'm not confrontational. I'm not going to be like, fighting with people, but I am going to be the person that's on the sidelines giving people biscuits and scones and hugging them and walking them when they're, experiencing all of the horrible things that we can experience in life because I have to be a voice for those who don't. And I think like that's the way that witchcraft really has empowered me to do that.
That's beautiful. Also, you mentioned like biscuits and scones. I was going to ask, like, you do kind of like it sounds like your practice would progress into kind of kitchen witch type things. Are you like a cook? Do you use like the kitchen?
I am a super kitchen witch. I think it's really hard to like tell someone like I'm going to sprinkle you with like a salter of rosemary sprig. It's really easy for me to say, hey, we are celebrating like New Year's, and I want for y'all to come over and have some scones. And then I know that in the scone, like I've blessed the butter for like abundance. I've blessed the rosemary for light and remembrance. I've blessed like the flour for prosperity. Like, like I know that I'm blessing these things for that. And like they're able to enjoy it and we're able to like talk about it. But it's a very different kind of like communal experience than let's just go out into my garden and look at this plant.
Yeah. Rosemary especially, I don't think people give it enough credit. I have rabbits
I love it.
and my rabbits are kind of who I not experiment, but who I herbally treat because they are
Yeah.
so respondent to it. Rosemary, so they're this is like a nerd rant a little bit. They're obligatory nose breathers, which means they can't breathe through their mouth, which makes a cold fatal to a rabbit. Rosemary and hibiscus. I cannot tell you how much rosemary will end one of their sniffle fits so quickly.
Oh wow. I love
Yeah.
that.
It's in all of like ritualistic stuff, it is like a banisher, a cleanser, like it's supposed to be like really antithetical to like demonic energy or whatever you would like dark energy, but it also has like scientifically has been proven to have antibacterial properties.
Hmm.
And so that always really treats them. And like hibiscus is one that I really love using for, I mean, I would push hibiscus tea on anyone.
I love it. And we actually, so in Mexico, we actually have like a drink that's made with hibiscus. It's called Jamaica. And so we drink it all the time. So it's very much a part of our culture, but yes, it's also very much a part of our magic.
Yes, it's a beautiful flower, and it's also, I mean, so again, like scientifically, like that is the immune boost plant, really.
Hmm.
Oh, that's so cool. I noticed, so you were talking about like all these recipes. You use, I think I saw this on your Instagram, Llewellyn's books, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So we got up to Canada and I was like, I need my date book. I need my witch's date book. I've had one for like every year for the past like 5, 6 years, maybe longer, but I don't want to go like I don't want to age myself. But I literally cannot find one up here. We've been to like
What?
yes, we've been to like every bookstore, and I'm just like, come on, I need my date book now. So I can't wait to
I
get find it.
The date book and the spell a day almanac, those are the two things that every single morning, it is part of my ritual. I am going to be like reading them because I need to know. Like, I
Yes.
need to make sure that the day is going to be what the day is going to be.
And if you garden, then you must be able to use the actual plant versus harvest days little symbol, which I always pretended I would use, but then I am an apartment liver. I'm like a city girl, so I just have never had like a real garden. So that's cool. Do you use those little like the planting harvest days?
I do.
So cool. Are you someone who
Yeah.
makes the recipes in the book?
What?
Do you like cook the recipes that they put in? Because there's like a recipe every third day.
Yeah, no, I love it. Like I have not made all of them, but there was like this blackberry cobbler that was for I forget like what like little Sabbath it was for. And I was like, this is exactly the way that like I think about like ritualizing Sabbaths. So I'm going to do this. And so yeah, I will make the recipes from there, especially when they're like perfect for like whatever ritual I'm already doing. Like yes, food is very much a part of the way that I celebrate Sabbaths and
Yeah.
all of like those gorgeous pieces of the year.
Yeah, there's always so many cool like bread recipes and like soup recipes, and
Hmm.
I always pretend that I'm going to cook them, and I never do. I will say last year they like really highlighted and featured a lot of witches who had been persecuted, which I thought was really interesting and
Yes.
kind of for them. I was eating those up. I was like, "Oh my God."
I remember there was one who was like, yeah, I killed all of them because they suck as people. And so you can kill me too, but they were horrible. And I was like, yes, queen. Like, I mean, don't
Yeah.
kill people, right? But like, okay, cool. Like, you know what you're
Well,
doing.
back in those days, there were a lot of women who like had to, right? I mean, do you know about Julia Tofana?
Tell me about her.
Okay, an absolute kind of icon, in a way that I almost shouldn't promote her. Bailey Sarian talked about her, the makeup murder mystery Monday, whatever. And she is, I think she's attributed as the first female serial killer.
Oh,
She
wow.
would she would create a serum that basically you put 2 drops in your like abusive husband's food every night and natural causes 2 months later. And we still have no idea how many women she freed from abusive relationships is how I'll put it. Because back then, if your husband was abusing you, right, it was like his right to, but once you were a widow, you wouldn't have to remarry.
Hmm.
And so she just like liberated a lot of women that way. Um, Not to like promote that, but women's
Well, yeah,
wrongs.
but that yes, that is definitely I think going back to like the theme that we've been circling around, like this idea of being marginalized and like needing a space in which like you can regain power. And of course, like we don't condone murder. We don't want for people to be like dying. But I do think that like there is power in knowing what you can do, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, which comes from the word for wise. And so being wise can really help us do all of the things.
Yeah, and we'll like, especially nowadays, right? Like we can consult a client and be like, oh, if you're in an abusive relationship, like these are the ways that you can get out, and people can get
Hmm.
out now. So luckily we're way past having to do any of that. But yeah, I mean, we live in a much more advanced society. So a lot of the more risky work that those witches had to do, we don't have to really worry about anymore. And luckily, like we get to be just like lighthearted fortune tellers who can kind of help people work through things. I know for me, like
I
I've had
do
a
love
lot of
being able to help people work through things.
yeah, I've had a lot of clients who don't even realize that we're working through things until they're breaking down crying. And like
Mhm.
that's the kind of work that I'm glad that we get to do now. I say
It
we,
does
but
make
that
me
that
just so happy. Yeah, no, it
is the
definitely is like what I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is so cool. So with astrology, can I ask what do you use any programs, or do you draw your own charts, or
Nope, I like will use like whatever chart creator I can find most easily. I love Chani Nicholas's chart creator and we'll use that one most often. Yeah.
she's cool.
And then from
She's got a
she's
really cool
amazing.
app. Have you used the Chani app at all?
No, I am like super obsessed with the Chani app. Yeah.
Good. I knew I liked you. Same page on
Yeah, no,
so
she's
many
amazing.
things.
Yeah, she's amazing. And so yeah, I use her chat create or chart creator. And then we'll use that to like sort of figure out like what is going on. And then like there's lots of other little things that I use, like the time passages app, to like find out the current sky to be able to figure out like what's going on with the current sky and like a person's own chart.
Catch me literally slowly writing these down. Time passing? Wait, what was that
Time
one?
passages.
Time passages. I
Yeah,
use
I really love it.
Abe, which is like an old website from like 2008. And it's
Okay.
just abe.com, and it runs the astrology forecasts I do on Instagram, and you can do a natal chart that's like natal chart light. They're both very like astrology light version. Like they only do a couple aspects and like simplified, but that's super interesting. I also use like Solar Fire and Astro Gold, but they're like some of these things are so comprehensive that I'm like, I'm new at this, y'all.
I can't.
How long have you been
Yeah.
doing astrology?
About 5 years.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a long time to kind of compound all of that like information.
No, it's like super complex. Like I was not a math queen, and so like having to learn all of these aspects, having to learn how these aspects like are created, having to learn like degrees and all of that, like it's a lot. Like the mythological part is easy, or like the symbolic part is easy, but then it's like okay, like so Pluto is making a sextile to Mars at this degree in this sign, and it's like okay, like now I have to put all of that together for you in relationship to like what it is that your Pluto and Mars are doing, and it's
Yes.
fun, but it's a lot.
Yeah, you said that you wrote horoscopes, right? For like
Hmm.
publications. How did you do like do you want to talk about your process with that a little bit?
Yeah, for horoscopes, it's actually a little bit easier than like doing somebody's specific chart, right? Because like with a horoscope, what I'm doing is I'm really looking at like a sun sign over the course of like whatever the horoscope is for. So if it's for like a week, what is like the sun or doing with this sign, or like what planets are aspecting the sign, or where are these planets in relationship to this sign? If it's for a year, the same thing. Like what are some key dates? And so what I'll do is I'll look at like what are some of the influences that are going to be, you know, making themselves known for a specific sign, and whether
Mhm.
that's a planet, an aspect, a point, or just even like a way in what they're transiting, like you're able to then be able to do that.
Oh, okay. That actually makes so much sense. I wouldn't have thought about it that way because I was just reading a horoscope article, someone who did horoscopes, and she was like, I've been doing this for 30 years and I'm done. But she was talking about how much she had to like run charts and how much time she spent. And I was like, what does that even look like? Because I know with Solar Fire, if I have someone's chart, I can run it as a radix and kind of do predictive, but I don't know how to do it for the general public. And so it's one of those things where I'm really guilty of dropping whole things off. I'll be like, all right, I can run this, this, and this, but I don't even really want to learn about like rays yet.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Like, so, like, let's look at the astrology of tomorrow. So Uranus is stationing direct in Taurus, right? And so I'll look at like where Taurus would be in terms of the house of whatever specific sun sign, right? So if like Taurus is your first house because you're a Taurus sun, I'm going to be thinking, okay, like how is Uranus stationing direct going to impact you as a person? How is it impacting like your sense of self? Like, are you now going to suddenly be like, oh, I now have the resources that I need to make my life the way that I want it to be? Or are you going to want to completely overhaul like what it is that you've been like ruminating on for this past year, you know? And so like I have to like pick
Yeah.
up on like this is what it is that is happening, and this is how it's impacting you in terms of the house that this is falling in for whatever person it is.
See, and this is why people don't realize that an astrologer is so much more impressive or important than they think because it
Yeah.
looks easy to get done. It looks easy, and it's that same thing of like culturally we're like, oh, pish tosh or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's just silly nonsense that people make up, but people are not making up astrology. It is hard work.
No, yes, it is. It's a lot of Like that's just for tomorrow. And so like think of all of the transits that have happened like this week, and then think of all the transits that happen over the course of a year and how like you're now interpreting them in terms of a person and like what they might be going through. So yeah, it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, especially once you start bringing in people's charts. I mean, I know what I do every night on Instagram is applying aspects, the big, like
Hmm.
most simple aspects. But when I break it down in like the more like heavy hardcore programs, there's like every
Hmm.
planet's 5 aspects every minute. And
Yeah.
they're all doing such complicated things at different times of the day. I ran into something that I would actually, if you have experience, I would love to ask you about. There were a couple days there where we were dealing with literal, perfectly geometric pentagrams. Is that something that like pops up a lot?
I would imagine so, just because of the way that the planets move. But I don't know that like that's well, yeah, because like I mean like a perfect pentagram would be like a couple of sextiles, a few squares, and like two one opposition, right? And so that feels like yeah, two sextiles, two
Yes.
trines,
Yep.
and then like an opposition. And two squares. Yeah, no, yeah. Like
Yep.
like I'm picturing it in my head. Yeah, like that would make sense because that
Yeah.
happens.
Once I broke it down, and it was the moon too, so it popped up a few
Oh my God.
times.
If you include the moon, then yes, all the time. Because the moon's moving all like
Yeah.
so fast.
And then I realized that it was probably just the time of day that I was running them, and it wasn't like a whole forever thing. So now I have to, when I do them, I'm like, the moon is really ephemeral. If you're seeing this tomorrow, if you're seeing this later today, probably don't count the moon. But what it ended up being was a kite. And like as far as aspect patterns, it was a kite that cut into a mystic rectangle. So it was
Oh
a couple
wow.
positions. Yeah, I had to. I don't know. I've been learning a lot doing them. I have to kind of like warn people. I'm like, she's still learning. Give her a break, but we're gonna break this up together. It's almost more of a learning thing than a
I love
predicting thing.
it.
Yeah, but right, like it's like I gotta make this content somehow, and if I'm making content with the community that I'm building, then at least it's educational and we're in it together.
Perfect. And that's exactly what we like should be building, you know? We should be building community. We should be building the ways in which we can learn together because I mean this is like knowledge is power, you know? And being able to see this and being able to teach people this, I think is just so amazing and such an important thing for people to be able to see because that mirror that you're reflecting back to them about like what it is that the sky is showing is so magical.
That is so cool. So how did you find astrology? You're the first astrologer I've had on, and so I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit.
I I don't know that like I found astrology. I think it was just always part of like fortune telling, right? And so I mastered, and we'll put this in quotes, like tarot. And I was like, okay, like I know the cards, like I can see them in my head without, you know, any other stimulus, and I have like a bank of keywords for each of them. So I think like I know the cards as well as I can right now, right? Like I just need more practice. So I was like, okay, now that I've mastered the cards, let's now move on to mastering astrology. And so astrology has just been like a much longer process because there's, you know, you just have to learn the planets and then you have to learn the signs and then, or probably vice versa. You learn the signs, then the planets. Then you learn the aspects and then you learn how the aspects move into each other and then you learn how they impact all of the relationships that they have with each other and so it's just like layer after layer after layer.
You're making it
um
sound simple, and it's like, oof, it
it is
compounds till it's really complicated. It is simple, but it is complicated. It's I call it right brain math.
it is a lot of right brain math, but I think and maybe this will be a mindset shift for you, my love. It really is like I think like figuring out like the layer that you're in terms of like the astrological knowledge that you're looking for and staying there for as long as it takes, right? And
Yeah.
so like I'm thinking like you have to learn the signs first. And thankfully, like as a culture, as a society, we know a lot about the signs. Like everybody knows that like a Scorpio is mysterious and sexy. Geminis are two-faced and they like talk a lot. Like we know like the general parts of the signs. And so you're then able to like find the nuance and learn all of the different like parts of the sign, right? So that's layer one. And then from there it's like, okay, each of the planets and like has their own little flavor too,
Flavor.
and then it's like yeah, and then it's like okay, now the planets and the signs do something, and then they aspect each other, and then there's all of these other little relationships that you can go to. So right, so it's like if you master it layer by layer, it's going to take you forever, but you don't get, I know that it helps me not to get lost in like your Venus is in Taurus. I can do that. Your Venus is in Taurus and it's up opposing your Mars in Libra. Well, it wouldn't do that, right? But like, like you're just able, your Mars in Scorpio, that it would do. And you're able to do that and you're able to like see through those things in a way that I think helps make it a language
Yeah.
rather than like a calculation. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it also creates like it breaks through that gatekeeping, right? There's
Yeah.
so much that's like it's meant to be mysterious, right? Like the whole occult is like supposed to be like, or was supposed to be hidden, and now it's a little more accessible. And so breaking through that and making it more accessible is like such a difficult thing to do, because it also is, it's what you're saying, it's taking it step by step by step, because once it compounds you'll get there, but like when you try to jump into everything, oh my god, it'll start to get you.
And I think this is like where my like extensive years in like education, I think like can really help make me help others, right? Because it's like I know that like a kindergartner can't be doing algebra before I teach them the numbers, you
Yep.
know? And so you have to like make sure that you're I don't believe in gatekeeping. Like if somebody wants to know something, if I don't know it, I'm gonna figure out how to teach it to them. Because I think that you just have to find that access point for people and you have to be able to provide them with the access point, because I never want for somebody to feel disempowered. I think we've been talking about this all of our time together. Like we want to empower people. We want for people to feel like that they have the tools necessary to live their very best lives. And that's what I think like magic and astrology can really do.
Yeah. Yes. Wow, what a
Right?
great way to put everything. I love this energy, and also like I've been running into a common theme with all of these interviews, and that so much of us, before we get to our practice, have to go through the steps that kind of inform what our practice becomes. And education, that is a new one, but a great one. So in your time in education, were you still doing all of this kind of like in your free time? Did you feel like you had to like, did you bring it into the classroom, or did you kind of keep them very separate in spheres?
Yep. When I was a teacher, I wasn't necessarily like a practicing fortune teller. When I was a teacher, I was a witch, and like I would do like witchy things. But it was more about like I think what I that quote, like I would be a voice for those that didn't have it. Being a teacher on the border, like there were a lot of my kids that just needed somebody to be able to be a voice for them and say like you are going to go to whatever college you want to, and you are going to be able to like have a future that is yours to choose. And I'm going to make sure that you do it. And sometimes you're going to be really mad at me because I'm going to be, a witch to you, but you're going to do it. And I'm going to make sure that you do it. And I had a lot of great success. My business started around the same time that I was a principal. And so as a school principal, I don't know that I would necessarily like fortune tell and bring that into like my principal but it definitely impacted the way that like I viewed leadership, and the way that I viewed the way that like the collective really had power. And I think being able to bring all of that together really allowed for me to be a part of the community in a really rich way. I know that like my students, the parents of my students, like my teachers, I'm very queer, and so it's very hard to hide the glitter and the sequins. And so like they would know that I was queer, and they'd also know that like I was fortune telling. Like they'd see, the articles published or the markets that I do or any of those things, and we'd be able to like talk about it and help them through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Well,
gorgeous.
I was just going to give you props. Being a queer educator is not easy. I mean, especially, I guess it's never been easy. It would have been impossible at a certain time, difficult at a certain time, and then again now I feel like almost impossible, or at least coming up on that. I know when I was in college for art education originally, and I had an
Hmm.
inkling going to transition, and I was like, I can't do it. I went into digital media. I completely dropped the education because I just like foresaw challenges or like difficulties where I was like, I just can't deal with the propagandized. I had already couldn't even deal with the thought of just like propagandized people coming into my class space or whatever that would have looked like. So props to
Hmm.
you for that space. It sounds like education kind of helped you solidify like the authority to be yourself though.
It did. I think like I don't think that I ever struggled with like being confident or being myself. And I think like I mean, as a principal, like you're literally the boss of like a small company. And I had like 500 employees and like thousands of students, like literally, like I was in
Oh,
charge of
oh,
all of,
that's a
yeah,
big school.
like I was in charge of all of these lives. And like I, again, going back to that theme, like as a witch, like it is my job to make sure that you are living your best life. Like it is my
Mhm.
job to like make sure that nobody can hurt you, nobody can harm you, nobody can do things that are going to be detrimental to you. And so fortune telling, I think, dovetailed really beautifully with that because it was like I can see things, I can know things, and if I can see and I can know, how do I help you see and know so that you're able to be exactly who it is that you should be?
That's
So I love,
so
yeah, being a leader
beautiful.
was my favorite thing.
So with one thing I'll ask, have you ever tried palmistry?
I have not.
Yeah, so when I got into fortune telling, I was very young. I found an astrology coffee table book from like the 80s that was my grandmother's. And in the back, it talked about how astrology informs palmistry. I just saw it. But and I got really sucked into palmistry, and I bet you'd be really good at it because it's that same layered thing as astrology, and
Hmm.
everything on palm and your fingers has an astrological correlation. And when we look at the lines have certain markings on them. And those markings actually, I will have to do more research into it, but I noticed recently they're pretty much the same interpretations as the aspects.
Oh, wow.
So it's almost like a star chart in your hand. And I don't know, that was my original one that I was really into when I was younger. But it can get even more complicated than astrology just because everyone's hand is literally going to be so different that it's really breaking things down. But
I love that.
yeah, in between tarot astrology and palmistry, you find a lot of common themes so that once you know one or two of the three, they start to get easier to learn. I bet you'd be really good at that one.
Thank you. I'll have to look it up. That sounds fun.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh my God, that is so cool. I will say, do you have any like spiritual experiences that were like really interesting or like just like close to your like journey that you'd like to share?
Sure. Yeah, I think like I'm very Catholic. And so I like pray the rosary every morning and I like go to mass every Sunday. And that's a very big like part of like my spiritual practice. And there's a book, Enchantment by Catherine May, that talks about these things called hierophanies that are when you see like God in like the world, right? Like you're able to like see him actually existing. And so
Beautiful.
I think, yeah, it's really gorgeous. And so like I think like the spiritual experience that I have are literally like right now, like I'm looking outside of like the window that I'm in this office in. And like the way that the sun is like making these angles on the house, like it's like, oh my God, that's like so gorgeous. We had like a freeze last week, which is very unusual for us. Not unusual for y'all, but very unusual for us. And I went for a walk and I could just see the way that like the ice had formed a protective barrier over the plants, like literally like a sheath over them. And it just made me realize like the magic that like nature has to keep itself in whatever way it needs to. And I think like those kinds of spiritual practices, those kinds of spiritual experiences, like really just, I think, allow for me to maintain a really close spiritual connection with the land and with the world at large.
That is so beautiful. I mean, Catholicism has been like not constantly repeating, but it has been like a repeating theme in these. And it's interesting. It's almost like a lot of the Catholic kind of cultures, because I know the last time we talked about it was an Irish Catholic family who was like really using it as almost like a cover for paganism or like kind of like incorporating it. And so it's interesting to hear that like Catholicism is part of your witchcraft practice, because witchcraft doesn't have to be like classic Wiccan. And even I think if you express like a different type of gender or like or your body is different than most people's, like Wicca is a really inaccessible kind of way to do any kind of like ritual work or like I don't know, but it is just like very binary sexual kind of like religion, just like classic Wicca. And it's
Mm.
interesting. Yeah. But Catholicism, as a queer person, props to you. What a reclamation.
I think like I mean even like going to like the Wicca, like I mean like I've read like the Wicca books and I've read like the like lots of these books and I think like it nothing is ever going to be a perfect fit, right?
Mm,
Nothing is ever going to be exactly made for like you. And there are some things that are made like that are actively harmful. And there are some things that are that like you can, to use your word, like a reclaim. And I
mhm.
think like I love that I was born into a family that was like as faithful and as practicing of a Catholic as I was, because the church that I went to, like my nun gave like a nun gave me my confirmation, which is very unusual. And like so I never experienced, I think, a lot of like the strictness that I think others may have. And that I know like has caused a lot of harm. But I think for me, like all of these practices, all of these ways of like looking at the world, like whether it's Wicca, whether it's Catholicism, whether it's, you know, just like my own pagan deity worship or my own nature worship, like they come together, I think, in a way that is for me, right? And I think you spoke earlier about like how your eclectic witchcraft, like it's all like puzzle pieces that need each other to fit, right? And I think that's the most gorgeous thing that we can do for each other is to give each other the grace and the space to find the pieces that make everyone feel like they fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need that, right? Because it's not
Hmm.
everyone's going to be able to do the same things, and everyone needs something different from us. There's like, if you're somebody who serves the community, then you need to be ready to serve like people who maybe like resonate with you and people who don't resonate with you and know where to send people. Yeah, there's just no one size fits all. It's really it's really an individual thing, and it takes a lifetime to really learn or to find or to build.
100%. And I think anybody that tells you that what they have is exactly meant for you is somebody that you probably don't want to trust. Like everybody needs to be listened to and done what is right for them, you know?
Mhm. So with this is, I know I'm pushing time, but are you good? Cool.
We
I
got a
just
few
want to
minutes,
ask,
yeah.
I want to ask you real quick, like as far as like your journey into finding like your identity, really, because you non-binary, they them,
Mhm. Yep.
God bless, we love it.
Mhm.
So how do you feel like that affects your spirituality? Because I know a lot of cultures looked towards people who kind of had both or a fluidity as spiritually enlightened, like inherently. Like you said that this is something you've always known, right?
Yeah, I also don't think that like not to like dismiss anybody's experience, but I don't think that like me being non-binary like meant that I was going to be more spiritually like
Yeah.
receptive. I think like those were distinct parts of me. I do think that being non-binary gave me a lens to see the world in exactly the way that we were talking about, right? Like that I know that not everything is going to fit. Like I know that these books that were written, 50, 70, hundreds of years ago did not have in their mind like a non-binary queer Latinx Catholic witch. Like it wasn't for me, And so like I can't like slight them for not like reading from my perspective. And I then have to be able to like take what it is that they're saying into like my own lens. And I think like that has been what has probably been the best part of like recognizing like my own identity and like finding my own identity is that it is mine and it doesn't have to be anybody else's. And it allows for me, I think, to be able to gain the perspective that not everything is meant for me and I'm not meant for everything, but that we're able to find the community and find the relationship in order to make things work. And so I think like my spirituality is impacted by my identity in that it provides me with an understanding of being able, and I think RuPaul talks about this, like being able to see behind like the wizard's curtain, and knowing that the world is kind of like it is whatever you make of it, and there's nothing
Yeah.
really there that isn't like what we have said is there, which I think is just a really powerful way of looking at the world.
Yeah. And also speaking to your experience, like the fact that you're so open with it is like it's like it's just so important because I
Hmm.
know for me, I've had all of these interviews so far with like cisgendered, straight identified people and well one vaguely non-binary kind of gender fluid person for sure. I don't want to discount them, but I do feel like being a binary trans person, like it's very difficult for us to speak on that experience of like two spirit or however you identify like that fluidity. But so much of like our culture is cis people speaking on that experience without really identifying that way. And so I've had a lot of people so far like talk about gender fluidity or finding the gender balance or things like that. And I think on a binary scale, for all of us who are either on a specific binary or kind of geared towards another one, it's really important to hold space for people who are like kind of that centered piece to like speak on experience because I think there's so few or so many feel silence that the chance to speak on it is really like I don't know, we don't get it enough and then we try to speak for y'all and it's really we shouldn't be doing that.
I think I think that's a tough little statement, right? Because again, I think going back to what I was saying, like we can't have lived everyone's experience. And I think if we silo ourselves into only speaking about experiences that we've lived, we can lose some of the opportunity to build that community, right? Like we can lose some of that opportunity to like see the commonalities between us and between our experiences and between like what is going on. And I think like as somebody who has gone through like the whole am I trans, am I mask, am I just gay, am I like where did I fall, and then like finally realizing no, you're non-binary, like you're gender fluid, like you experience like gender in a very different way than most others. I think it's important to just have people like be able to like think through like how does your experience mirror mine and how does it not? And rather than like I can't even imagine your experience, so I'm not going to think about it, you know? And
Yeah.
I think like that bridge is a really necessary part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it takes everyone sharing their experiences. I just um especially right now where we are in America, like the non-binary voices are some of the most important voices that we have to hold on to. And so just like I love you for your strength and I love you for your identity and being able to bring that out and just like uh, I hope that you like I hope you know that I'm fully here on your side, just like appreciating you. And I'm so grateful that you are here and you're willing to speak on that because I don't think we're at a place really where we've had enough people who are comfortable speaking on it or being comfortable identifying that way. And um, just so important and so much energy towards you to just know that you're valid and um, just love from me, really. Um,
Well, I am
I had
loving you right back, and I am giving us both a big ol' hug because yes, like we need lots of love right now. And I think like that's the best thing that we can give each other and just continuing to foster community and foster the relationships with each other to allow for us to see the human and to see like what it is that we can do to make our world the world that like we've all dreamed that it should be and such a beautiful place.
Yeah, and also there's something to be said about especially right now in the conversation about like trendiness or like choosing things. There's something to be said about
Mm,
sharing this from like those of us who, because for me, same, like it's just never been a question for me that like
yep.
this was who it was, this is who I was gonna become, like younger, drawing out literally I like drew. Now that I am myself, I was drawing myself every day of my entire life, like different outfits, different hairs, different things that I now embody, and I don't feel like I have to draw anymore. And I don't know, there's just I think it's going to be important for all of us to share our stories, especially making sure people know that this wasn't something that was pushed on us or a trend that we just always kind of knew. um, but we're kind of hitting time. I really appreciate you for that last one.
Of course.
So the last thing I talk about is how can people find you? Where can they find you? How can they book a reading? How do we support you?
Support me in all the ways, because I'm one of those. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok. It is Golden Mirror Fortunes. You can book a reading through me by DMing me. I'd love to help all of you just lead a more gorgeous life. So find me on Instagram or TikTok, Golden Mirror Fortunes.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. And that is a wrap on the Lucky Rabbits talk show for today. That's just thank you again for being here. I'm gonna end the call and then we can talk for a second and I'll let you get on with your life.
I love you. Thank you so much. Bye.